everything that I learned about the Iowa caucus voter and how they felt about their choices, I learned from listening to you interview them. So I'm dying to hear what you've learned about the New Hampshire primary voter, which includes, I think, one of the highest chunks of independents in the country.
Undeclared voters, and that is the largest voting bloc here in New Hampshire. And they're telling me a lot of the same things the Iowa voters told me, that they were making their decision at the last possible minute. I spoke to a few people today who said they either made their decision last night or they literally walked into the booth today, a booth like the one behind me, and picked who they were going to vote for in that moment. Voters here tell me they have a sense of paralysis because there are so many different candidates to choose from. A lot of people say their number one issue is electability, and what they're looking at is they're trying to find the candidate who they believe can stand up against Donald Trump. Joe Biden was making that case forever, but now that he's slipping in Iowa and he's slipping in New Hampshire right now, and who knows what's going to happen in Nevada or South Carolina, they're rethinking that choice. I'm hearing a lot of Amy Klobuchar to give you a sense of where we are right now, and it's a lot different from Iowa because it's not a caucus. We're at a polling site, and I have to be careful about where I put the camera because we don't want to be accused of electioneering or getting involved in how people vote. But if you are an undeclared voter in New Hampshire, you can go here and you can check in, and then you can decide, I want to vote for a Democrat or I want to vote for a Republican. You do that here. You declare for a Democrat or Republican, either one you want. After you put your ballot in, and say you don't want to be a Republican or a Democrat, only 3 minutes is as long as you can be a Republican or a Democrat for. You come over here and you undeclare, and then you walk right out. And we're going to check to see if there's any lines out here, Nicole. So far, there is not. There's no line out here. And that is going to be an issue potentially, because what people want to see on the Democrat side is turnout. They really want to see higher turnout than what they saw in Iowa. So at this location, it's a little heavier than normal so far. We're in a bit of a dead time right now, 4 p.m. They expect it to get a little busier as the evening rush lets on. It's a small location, so the lines could be quite long outside of the block. And this is an interesting location because it's the most diverse. That's relative. It's the most diverse for New Hampshire. It's still 80% white, but there are some minority voters here, and it's a good place to figure out how exactly they're thinking. And it could be an indicator for what we might see going forward in the more diverse states that come up in the primary season.
Katie, if you can stay with us, we tried and failed, but I think we're going to try again to play some of Bernie Sanders' sound from his rally last night. I wonder if this closing message from Sanders, who's atop all of the polling I've seen in New Hampshire, is resonating. Let's listen and talk on the other side.
We are going to defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of America, Donald Trump. The reason that we are going to win is the American people, no matter what their political views may be, are sick and tired of a president who is a pathological liar, who is running a corrupt administration, who is a bully and a vindictive person, who is a racist, a sexist, a xenophobe, a homophobe, and a religious bigot. And those are his nice qualities.
Bernie is going to tell us how he really feels about Donald Trump at a later point in time. Katie Tur, even from Bernie Sanders, a surprisingly harsh anti-Trump closer here for the New Hampshire voters. Katie.
Well, it depends. I mean, there are New Hampshire voters here who are really excited about Bernie Sanders, and they think that he's not divisive, and that they think that he's got good ideas, and they believe he's somebody who can accomplish those ideas. They're the diehard Bernie supporters. He won this state in 2016, but then there are those that look at him and say, I'm just not so sure about him. He kind of scares me. Those ideas are too big. I don't see how he can get them done with this Congress that we have, especially if the Republicans still control the Senate. They don't see it as plausible. But I want to talk to, we have a voter out here. Sir, you were watching, so you're going to be on television now. Can you tell us who you voted for?
Donald John Trump.
You voted for Donald John Trump?
Yeah.
Look at that. Bernie Sanders is not appealing to you?
their whole ideology would be destructive to the country. It's anti-growth, it's anti-family, it's anti-American, and as a Roman Catholic, it's anti-life.
Sir, thank you so much for telling us who you voted for. We appreciate it. Let's ask these other folks over here as well. Can you tell us who you voted for, sir?
No, I can't.
You cannot.
No.
You're keeping it a secret.
No, because I'm changing.
You're an election official.
I'm changing wards. I'm
Got
going
it.
to another ward to help them out.
Well, what about you guys? Will
Otherwise I
you?
would.
Thank you, sir, very much. Can you guys tell us who you voted for? Of course not.
Because you're a celebrity doesn't mean you can get away with this.
I can't ask you who you're voting for? Okay. Thank you, sir. New Hampshire voters, you don't have to tell me who you voted for. It's fine if you don't want to. We're going to see if the lines get a little bit bigger here later, Nicole. So far, a bit of a trickle.
Katie, I have a question for you. So you're
striking out.
You're reporting on the
striking
ground,
out.
but I think that what you just showed all of our viewers, anyone that's worked on a presidential campaign, I've worked on a few, has campaigned in Iowa and they have campaigned in New Hampshire, and you just showed us the difference between those two states. In Iowa, they not only will tell you who their first choice is, they'll tell you who their second choice is, they'll tell you who their third choice is, they'll invite you over for dinner to sort of explain where they're coming from. In New Hampshire, they will not tell you which primary they vote. I mean, I will be surprised if people even indicate to you whether they walked in there and participated in the Democratic or Republican primary. New Hampshire voters keep it close to the vest, and it's why tonight will be exciting.
It kind of depends on where you are. Certainly in Bedford earlier, we got a lot of folks who were just really happy to tell us who they voted for and their process and how they came to that decision. But here in Nashua so far, I don't know, maybe if we see larger crowds later, maybe they didn't like my Iowa coverage. Maybe that's all it was.
You know what, Katie? Listen, it's not you, it's me. Stay with us, my friend. Vaughn Hilliard, I want to bring you in. You've been traveling with Pete Buttigieg. I want to show you his closing argument. We'll talk about it on the other side.
The totality of this presidency is one that has divided the country and has broken promise after promise to working people. And he's like the rooster who thinks he made the sun come up. Right now, we're still in a scramble. And that's part of why we are going through this process, is to identify the messenger who can do the best job of conveying to the American people. It's not just about poking holes in Trump's fairy tales. It's about explaining where we're going next.
Vaughn Hilliard, Pete Buttigieg, one thing, whether you are a diehard Pete Buttigieg fan or open to him as the nominee or skeptical of him, he always makes his case to the voter about the future. And having worked on campaigns myself, that is often a winning closing message.
That has been his message. That was his message in those last 3 weeks of Iowa. And that Iowa, essentially that tie coming out of Iowa, validated it and allowed him to take it here. You know, he stopped into communities of a couple thousand, and he's gone from Manchester to Nashua. You know, Nashua is a town of 90,000, much like that of South Bend, Indiana. I was talking with one campaign official last night who said, look, you know, this may not be our backyard, but in a lot of ways, these communities, the kind of the grittiness of it is very representative of that of South Bend. And that's why they view this, even though, you know, this is Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders' backyard, that this is a place that they are optimistic about tonight. And, you know, about looking towards that future, it's the independence that he's trying to lure over, making it a welcoming party. He said, you know, it's sometimes hard for folks to even turn on the TV and listen. And he said, instead of moving away from the political system, open one's heart to potentially voting Democrat. And he said he is not running away from his position, whether it be his stance on abortion, his stance on, you know, gay rights. You know, this is a man who says that he is a liberal, he is a Democrat. At the same time, that doesn't mean that folks from the right can't be welcomed into this party at this moment in time.
You know, Vaughn, how does the Buttigieg campaign sort of put the Iowa effect into context in terms of these final polls? Sanders, clearly the front runner. Anything other than a decisive victory from him would be surprising. This is a state that he won overwhelmingly 4 years ago. Yeah. But Buttigieg moved into the second place slot after that, after winning the most delegates in those tumultuous and chaotic Iowa caucuses. Where do they put the Iowa impact in terms of their current standing in the polls, which is second, but they've got a strong pack sort of basically tied for third in Warren, Biden, and Klobuchar?
Iowa made them relevant here in New Hampshire. And that is exactly why the campaign officials are telling me that they want to propel themselves out of this state and put into voters' minds that this is a two-person race. Yes, Joe Biden and Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren may fare well here out of New Hampshire, but when it comes down to it, and you see Michael Bloomberg waiting in those Super Tuesday states, they want that Iowa victory and then a New Hampshire, either a victory or a near second place finish to validate their reasoning for being in this race. You know, you saw those numbers shoot up over the last week here by nearly 10 percentage points here in New Hampshire, and they contend that the exact same thing will take place in Nevada and South Carolina, especially communities of color. You know, you saw that Quinnipiac national poll that came out yesterday with among black voters nationally. Pete Buttigieg is still just at 4%, but the campaign contends that, you know, it's communities of colors that have the most to lose under another term of the Trump administration. And when folks realize that Pete Buttigieg is a real candidate, get to know him better, and realize that he has a true shot to not only win in the Midwest, but also a place like New Hampshire where Donald Trump lost by just 3,000 votes here 4 years ago, then they'll begin to take a more serious eye to him. Of course, he's been campaigning for more than a year, so there's a lot of work to do, though, over the next week or 2 weeks.
You know, I want to bring Alexi McCammon in on the Biden strategy. Biden expected to depart the state of New Hampshire before the results are known tonight. He has long pointed to South Carolina as the place where his appeal to a broader part of the Democratic electorate would be showcased. But I know from the failed campaigns of people like Rudy Giuliani, when your strategy is I will win later, sometimes you lose your momentum. You lose the electability argument, which was Joe Biden's central case to the Democratic base.
You know, he's facing a really uncomfortable truth in this race after Iowa, and now New Hampshire is looking just as bad for him as Iowa was, which is that voters are increasingly signaling in polling and in conversations with us here on the ground that they don't view Joe Biden as the most electable candidate right now. Yes, national polling shows that, but, you know, polling is not the same as what you're hearing from voters on the ground and seeing in these early voting states. I don't think that any presidential candidate who has done worse than second place in New Hampshire has gone on to become the nominee for their party, and that is another uncomfortable truth facing Joe Biden. The other uncomfortable truth facing Joe Biden is that, yes, he's departing early to go to South Carolina and really court black voters and make his closing argument to them, but so are a lot of other candidates and campaigns. Tom Steyer has been there this week campaigning. Instead of being in New Hampshire, he's also pumped millions of dollars into his campaign and his operation in South Carolina, and the polling is rewarding him with black voters there. Pete Buttigieg is making a stop in South Carolina between New Hampshire and Nevada, his campaign tells me. Simone Sanders, Joe Biden's campaign advisor, was in South Carolina yesterday, hitting the airwaves, canvassing with black voters and trying to get their last-minute support for him. But all these other folks are looking at Joe Biden falling and tumbling in the polls and in these early voting states, and they're no longer allowing him to have a monopoly on black voters in South Carolina because they're seeing the fact that voters increasingly don't view him as the best person to beat President Trump. There's a new Quinnipiac poll that shows that Michael Bloomberg is in third place in terms of electability. And that's something that's also got to worry the Biden campaign.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.